And so as we started, going through this, it was very clear that adult sibling healing is a universally overlooked population in the mental health field. If you go on Psychology Today and you try to find somebody, and they have a list of all the different things that you can, single out to try to find just the right fit for you, nowhere on there does it say adult sibling healing. Everything else exists but that. And so we realized that we needed to create a modality to heal it for ourselves. And that's how this began as well.
I love it. I love it. Welcome, everybody, to Spoil Your Baby podcast. I am so excited to be here with sisters today, Jessica and Bluma. Jessica is an entrepreneur, and Bluma is a clinical psychologist who has worked for over 20 years with dyads or pairs, including couples, parents and children, and people who are coworkers. So thank you both so much for being here. I didn't reveal the mystery of the topic yet, but let's first just say hello. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having us, Greer. We're so excited.
Yeah. So we connected over your new book that's coming out. We'll have the link for everyone to check it out. It's a very exciting new area for us to understand ourselves, understand where we come from, and also to possibly heal and parent. So it's so exciting. Mm-hmm. Will you tell us what it's about?
Yeah. Well, let's see the title first because it's so fun and it just speaks to most people. It's called "I'm Right, You're Stupid." Growing, right? It's so that's what you say to your sibling. I'm right, you're stupid. And then growing up your sibling relationship.
Amazing.
And we wrote it together. We hated each other our entire lives until the pandemic. We figured out slowly on Zooms how to heal our relationship. And early on, we realized that no one else is doing this. No one else is healing their sibling relationship, or not a large portion of the population. And so we started documenting it. And because of Bluma's background as a psychologist, she was able to add some pieces of that. But then also we're both love research. And so we really dove in deep regarding looking at what already exists out there, which is not a lot. But so that reinforced that we were on the right path to help other people.
That's amazing that you did it through your own experience and sort of just like stumbled upon this topic and the healing also through Zoom. That's really interesting too. But the pandemic really changed things for people in a lot of ways, and we prioritized our relationships, I think, during that time.
Absolutely. You said stumbled, but I would almost say it smacked us straight in the face, because it was just a constant reminder that no matter what work we did in our individual lives to enhance ourselves, to heal ourselves, every time Jessica and I got back together, whether it was on the phone or in person, it was just like something in us drove this origin story of our pain to dominate how we interacted with each other, dominate anything that we would have preferred to have tried a different approach. And so as we started, going through this, it was very clear that adult sibling healing is a universally overlooked population in the mental health field. If you go on Psychology Today and you try to find somebody, and they have a list of all the different things that you can, single out to try to find just the right fit for you, nowhere on there does it say adult sibling healing. Everything else exists but that. And so we realized that we needed to create a modality to heal it for ourselves. And that's how this began as well.
I love it. I love it. So tell us, what is the root then of some of this relationship wounding for siblings? How does it form? Where does it come from? What did you discover in that realm?
Lots of things. We'll both talk about a few different things. a big thing that I wasn't even aware of before is family legacy burdens, that it can from one generation to another. I was a black sheep and my sister was the favorite. My mom was the black sheep, her sister was the favorite. My grandma was the black sheep and her sister was the favorite. And it goes on
Wow.
and on and on.
Wow.
And that's
So
just our
we
mom's
broke,
side. There's also a
right.
dad's side
Oh,
too.
right, exactly. Right. We broke, and we were like, we broke those generational ties. Done. Go ahead, Bluma.
Yes, that's important. So important because you both have children too.
Absolutely. And Jessica and I think that big part of how, excuse me, ladies, a big part of how we were able to even have perspective on how important this was is because in our own motherhoods, which we did not really cross over for the years that we had young children, we were estranged for most of that. But we each have gone through stories that we experienced of seeing our own children having our own reactions to one of them, thinking, gosh, oh, he's just like Jessica or she's just like Bluma. And we had those experiences, and also giving us perspective on what we didn't get and still not knowing how to do it for ourselves and trying to figure out how to do it for our kids. So I think that in our book, we talk about that there's, roots to things within the sibling relationship, and there's roots to things within how the parents, act as barometers for how siblings understand how far you can go with one sibling or another. Mm-hmm. And so I think the roots are deep and they're broad, breadth and depth.
Well, and when you say that, how far you can go, meaning in front of your parent, I'll give an example of our relationship in our family dynamic. Bluma would verbally and emotionally abuse me, and my mom would do nothing, and I would be saying, "Mom, come on!" She's saying she's so amazing with words. Positively and negatively, and she's just like this master of words, and so it really hurt me to my core. And plus, she's my sibling, of course, right? She's family. And then I would act out because I wasn't being heard, and so I would physically then beat her up, and it just my mom. Then I would be punished. Right. And so they created this whole dynamic of over and over and over of the same thing throughout our pattern throughout our lives. And then
that pattern that she's describing. No, but it's so important, Jessica, because when she's describing it right now, she's looking at it from what happened for her, that I did this thing and she reacted. From my perspective, I was like, she did this thing and I reacted. And I think that is a really important part of the root of the sibling aspect of this, right? Because, only in 2017, and, we're talking about the 70s between us, did she come to have a realization, wait, hang on. I was always told that it was my fault, but she did this thing too. And it took until 2019 for me to really be able to internalize that and understand that, yeah, in fact, even though I always felt like I was the victim to her abuse and she felt like she was the victim to mine, actually, we both became both roles for each other. And it's very hard to it's very hard to open yourself to an acceptance that you played a role in that dynamic when you only ever thought that you were abused. Now, I realize that that's kind of a controversial thing to say for people who may not want to hear it that way. But as children, you are little. We're 3 and 6, or you don't have the skill set, and that's where the parent role really does need to come in. And that was not really a big part of our story.
Yeah, it really takes a lot of maturity to be able to know there's a child's perspective and a child's story, which is probably the story that's still alive in us. And then the story we can have about what happened standing back in this time. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And a lot of the parents that I work with have multiple children, and this is hard for them to navigate, right? Navigate
for
sibling disputes, from the young years all the way up. So what are some things that can make the sibling relationship healthy that the parent can do? I know you talked about that, you felt your mom wasn't protecting you, was not mediating or teaching or guiding these kind of interactions? What would, talk about all of it. Like what's your analysis of that?
So I want Bluma to talk more further about archetypes in a second, but I will say for me as a parent, early on, I was like, my first reaction was what I was taught from my parent, how my parents showed up, yelling. Like, we lived in a somewhat chaotic, or it was chaotic, very chaotic. Let me just take ownership. It was chaotic. There were really no boundaries. And so as a parent, when I became one, I was like, wait a minute. No, that's not how I want to show up. And partly why I had this realization about that is because I had done 10 years of Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People, which showed me how to treat people, right? I didn't get that teaching from my parents, and any of us did in our family. And so when I got to this point, I Googled and also listened deeply to how I wanted to raise my children, right? How I wanted to talk to them in a way when they fought, I did not choose sides, right? I said, this is how you contributed. This is how you contributed. And when they came, I gave them, they needed to take a break after that. And then when it came back to, okay, let's talk about this, I eventually had them write a letter to each other, or depending on what age they were, if they couldn't write, to explain internally what they loved about this person, their sibling, not anything external. You have pretty eyes, nothing like that. It had to be who they were as a character, as a human being, so that they could see the beauty in each other and see beyond what they were currently fighting on or about.
That's really nice, Jess. I would like to answer it from like two levels, like from the individual level and from like the system level. So I'm, as a parent, right, we go through pregnancy and then we have a baby, and we're like alone with it, and everyone says, oh, you'll figure it out, or they give you advice and it doesn't work. And it's very stressful. That period of time that, like right before you give birth and right after you give birth is this very, I would say stressful time. Okay. And, so when we have our baby and we're going through that, we need support in a way that very likely, I'm sure, your listeners, we, talked a little bit about this before that, before we got on the podcast, that, we feel very alone, abandoned in some ways by our family when we have children.
And I think people also just feel angry. They're like, why am I like, this is not supposed to be like this. Where are my people? Like, why aren't people showing up? Even if it's unconscious, some people might actually know it. Like, I feel like I need to be mothered or have a sister or someone take care of me. But
Absolutely.
Unconsciously, I think everybody feels it because
and also angry that it's so hard. Like everyone, you have this dream of having a baby. Yeah. And then this baby doesn't, and you're tired and all these kind of things. And I think that plays into a lot of how, my goodness, this talk, how a lot of this, so how the stress plays out. And that's the key piece about this. The first aspect is the individual. So, maybe, your listeners, this was something new for us to learn, that, stress is really, cortisol running through our body. I mean, at least that's the most common in mammals, right? And the way that stress is regulated by mammals is through glucocorticoid receptors, which we could just call GRs, okay? And the more GRs a person has, the more they can manage stress in a successful way. And the major way that we acquire GRs is through the nurturing that we receive by our mothers or primary caretakers. And it's a very critical period in that very early time. And if what you get is what you get, you can't develop more.
Right.
Well, I was just going to say this, that's the individual. The part that is the system. So then what happens? If you have a parent who is not necessarily knowing how to co-regulate you toward calm, then you're going to co-dysregulate. And if you don't learn how to calm your system, you are going to be in a situation of feeling a lot of chronic stress. If the system itself, operates that way, and there are siblings, everybody has to figure out what role do they play to bring the system to some version of homeostasis, some version of calm. And that's where these archetypes come in, and everybody sort of figures out what role fits them or what role is ascribed to them, right? So Jessica was a very active, excited, curious child who probably didn't want to sleep that much, probably wanted to stay up late. I mean, I have a kid like that as well, and it's exhausting. Honestly, it is. And if you aren't a person who our mother is a low energy person, and so it was a very mismatch of energy fit. And so Jessica became difficult, became spastic, became words that became her identity on a level. And then she operated as this difficult black sheep kind of, rebel. And it goes on with other siblings. And so I think that's another part of how, I became the favorite in the sense, in part because I was so different than Jessica. I wasn't like that at all. I was easier on a level. I was talkative and
closer to my mom, though. Their energy levels were closer to each other, right?
Yeah.
Well,
correct.
I mean,
so it seems
energy.
Easy.
I don't agree with energy level. I have a lot of energy. But we both are word nerds. We're both word nerds. And so I think that was a place that we had that was not a mismatch.
Yeah. And I think that's, you bring up like a big concern of parents, right? We talk about a lot of people ask me like, how close together should I have siblings? When will I know it's the right time? Or if they do have, especially if they have two babies, like two or more children
twins.
under 3 years old, or twins or triplets, and or multiples. It's all open now. Then they're worried, right? They're like, how do I regulate these two nervous systems? How do I have multiple children and be that regulator, the co-regulator, the nurturer, and all of these things? So I feel like that is a separate question. But I think the question for you, since you brought up that is the major role of the mother, right? To regulate.
Not just the mother, both, but the parent. Yes. Hopefully, if you have a husband as well, or another person.
Mostly the primary caregiver, right? Yeah. Whoever's with the children the most. Of course, we want both parents to be involved. Like, please be involved. We already talked about how much mothers need help.
Yes.
But there, typically that's what it looks like, right? There's usually like the mother or one parent who's the primary caregiver. Sometimes people split it though, and that's lovely too. But it's almost like comes up in my mind is like, if that resource is limited, like if the mother or primary caregiver only has a certain amount of co-regulation to give, is that a source for the children? I think, Bluma, you talked about then that, if that's true, then siblings will have to kind of figure out their survival scheme, right? Like there's
competing energies, you're competing for, you are competing for attention, and attention can be it can be love, it can be belonging, it can be harmony, it can be, fairness. Those are things that we're pulling for, so that and it is a feeling of survival. If you look at little kids, it's a very black and white time for them. She gets, I don't. Unless a parent, finds a way of doing that, it's going to be.
I never told my kids would sometimes say, "Oh, he's the favorite," and I intentionally, I don't have and I know lots of people, parents say this, I don't have a favorite, but I found opportunities to, like, my daughter for a while was saying, "You don't get me," and so I found opportunities to get her, right? To say, look, I would be in the act of whatever the situation was. And I'd find an opportunity to get and say, look, I get you. Because my mom did the opposite. She did amazing in lots of other ways. I have dyslexia, and she gave me a lot of attention. That's where her focus was with me. But,
and that actually is interesting, Jessica.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Well, ultimately, the parent is the adult. Their prefrontal cortex is fully developed. And to say that the children so many parents are like, let them figure it out. This is where we feel very strongly about that is not, they are the child. They need parental supervision. I get teens too saying, it's, what is the saying right now is, it's not that deep. But it is. It's your job to, as an adult, as the parent, to help them learn how to regulate their and to create the relationship between them. And because the relationship with your sibling is the first relationship that you learn how to get along with someone or not get along with someone. And this is how you end up attracting future relationships, work relationships, intimate relationships, best friends, people who either abuse you or don't. And 90% of us has siblings, and 70% of all domestic violence that's reported to the police is from sibling abuse, and it's higher than spousal. And we want to put an end to that. It's unacceptable. I'm going to start crying. That bullying is acceptable inside the family, and it's called rivalry.
Mm-hmm.
No,
wow.
It's not okay.
Really powerful.
Jessica, you brought up something which is that, when that mom did this thing between us and made you feel excluded and made you feel like the fall guy, if you will. And then there was this other part of her that showed up in spades for your dyslexia. And that was actually something that was really difficult for me, because then it meant that my mother would take me out of school sometimes to Taco Bell and have lunch and then bring me back to school just to give me a little time. And so I think that when we try to tell moms, primary caregivers, but I'll use moms as the category of primary caregivers just for ease of language. But, not everybody, I didn't know how to regulate myself. In fact, that's something that we've learned as we have healed our sibling relationship. Honestly, we have rewired the part of us that did not know how to do that. And, Stephen Porges, maybe he's this really cool, I think he's a psychologist, but he wrote a book called The Polyvagal Theory. And we used a lot of that in the way that we learned. We used the science of that to look into what we could do for ourselves. And so something that, mothers can do is, so what the idea is that we have this nerve. There's the vagus nerve, and it's in the base of your brain, and it's the longest nerve in your entire body. It goes all the way down into your upper diaphragmatic organs. It goes up into your mouth and your ears and your eyes. And it is an autonomic nervous system, meaning you are not meant to control it. In fact, you can't control it. You can try to control your eyes from blinking for a little bit, but eventually you're like, it's too hard. You can't say, I don't feel like digesting right now. Or, I'd rather not, all these different things you can't. Sometimes we might like that, but the one part of our body that's a part of this auto system is our breath. And that's the one thing that we can use to tell our fight or flight, which is that, it's like, okay, scary situation. What do I do here? And fear comes up and cortisol levels, get high. And if you're like us, and I would say my glucocorticoid receptor development was a little bit small because I didn't feel that I had the ability to calm in stressful situations. I can tell my body as an adult, okay, girl, this is not, a saber-toothed tiger. It is okay to breathe and calm yourself down and not read the situation as scary, and getting yourself into a calm place. And so when you're baby, you put your baby down and you're like, okay, I can go and have a coffee. I can go and just sit in quiet. I can take a bath. And then 5 seconds after you walk away, your baby starts crying again. That is a very stressful situation for a mother. And so to be able to take 3 breaths, just slow inhale and very slow, piercing your lips like you're blowing through a straw, exhalation, and just really squeeze all that air out of your diaphragm. If you can do that 3 times, that's like that would be my golden number. You can get your body to calm into a place where all of a sudden now you can bond again with your baby and connect. And yeah, you might have to do that regularly, but that's something that that's an idea of what.
Yeah, it's amazing. I love that. You're offering that suggestion to parents to be present in the disputes between children to regulate them. And the other thing I always advocate for too is to help repair.
Oh, thank you for bringing that up.
Right?
Yes.
Because you said, as you said, this is a very important early relationship, we'll talk about how that can trigger trigger you in other relationships, or maybe influence how you pick other relationships or attract other relationships later on. But, the repair process, I teach my son all the time, and it's, still taking hundreds and hundreds of
Of course,
discussions.
then we just have to repeat as a parent,
Exactly.
which it's
We
so
learn
annoying.
slowly, but that is so
Yeah.
important too, right? I would have loved to have had that in my sibling relationship.
We talk about, perspective taking a lot in our book, because, as adults, we have lived with our experience, our lived experience of what it was like to be a child sibling with each other. And so sometimes most siblings don't ever really talk about those origin stories that they experienced. Yeah. And so as we were starting to heal our relationship, Jessica telling me her version of events, I was like, oh, my instinct is to want to correct her error of how she sees it, and vice versa. Because if we take in her truth and say, yeah, that I did that to you, I was toxic to you, I was verbally abusive to you, then suddenly I'm the bad guy. But I've told myself this whole time that I'm the victim, and so it's very difficult to be able to do that. And so, but it's vital. That's the healing, is being able to hear and take in someone's perspective. The earlier we teach that to children, the better chance they have at being able to do it for themselves.
Yes. And repair feels so challenging when, if we learn it and it's always available, it's actually quite straightforward to repair. And our hearts always want it, right? Almost always.
Yes. Exactly.
Yes. And also going to the breathing, something else that we did together, and it would be good to include the children in this exercise, is grounding, where you stand and go through each part of your body, because it helps you. Like, I'll give an example. Like, you start with your feet and you feel your feet rooted in the ground in wherever you are. It's nice to do it in grass, but not everyone has that. So like, if you're in your bedroom, fine. And you feel your feet grounding and rooting into the ground. And then you go to your ankles and you feel being a part of that part of your body. And then you go to your calves and really feel your calves. And so you work your whole way up. And when you're able to do that, you actually, because when you get dysregulated, you're outside yourself. And when you start doing this and grounding yourself, you get back into who you are and into your body. And then you feel more regulated, calm, and connected to God, right? To the universe, to who you are. And when you do that, and when we did that together, it helped us. That was a part, we talk about that in the book too. It really, Dr. Wayne Dyer is where I learned it first, but I learned it from this breath work woman. But anyways, it really does help you and your children to, if you can do that, because you could do that in the bathroom, right? Like, meaning if you're at work or if you're at school, if you're a kid and you're at school, you can go into a stall and do this. I mean, you could do it obviously in front of everyone if you are confident and comfortable to do that. But if you want some privacy, you can do it in a stall.
Jessica and I use this together. Jessica and I use this together so that we would co-regulate each other. Okay. And I think that that's a very key point, that we can teach this early. Kids know how to breathe, and you can do deep breath work with little ones. It's easy. That's a lifelong thing, right? So Jessica and I did a lot of like co-regulating each other in those moments when we would get stressed. And we would try to, before we, if we were trying to solve a problem and it was just escalating, it was like, okay, stop. Let's just do some breathing and center ourselves, and the Gottmans talk a lot about this with work, that, like once your heart rate gets above 100 beats per minute, you are not able to be creative or constructive at all. So there's no point in trying, because it's just not going to work. So rather calm your body down, get your fight or flight back into a calm place where you're like, okay, let's connect again. Let's find our bond. Let's find the place where we can feel, connected and calm together.
I love that. Our children are so lucky that We can teach them these things, and us too, right? Because this can be helpful in our mothering and our relationships, and all kinds of things like that. So why don't we shift to the kind of the topic of healing the sibling wounds? Because, I think so much of the discussion we've already had is so helpful for our moms who are either have multiple children or are thinking of multiple children. But they're also interested in healing themselves, rewiring their own nervous systems towards health. A lot of them, like as Bluma mentioned, like did have low amounts of nurture as a child, and they do have low glucocorticoid expression, and their whole nervous system, right, is more vulnerable to stress, and they're finding tremendous healing in their motherhoods. And I think you too felt that as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But this is a new topic, right? Healing the sibling wound. So how can that rewire our nervous system towards calm and that security that we talked about?
I first want to say, our titles, I'm Right, You're Stupid. And what we realized, and that's how people look at it before they do this work. But what we realized doing the work together is we're both right. Both our truths are our truth and our right. And so to be a witness to what they experienced and being present and being curious about that when they're doing this, explaining their truth, and really taking ownership of it, even if you don't remember what happened, but giving that love and compassion to them, and vice versa. Then one person takes a turn, and then the other person takes a turn, and you share if you remember any part of that situation, and you say, I don't remember a lot from my childhood because I compartmentalized because it was so chaotic. And so there were things that Bluma said, oh my God, I'm so sorry that I did that. Even if I didn't remember, because that's her truth. That's what she experienced. And that then helps you have this, your energy can be calm. And then what ends up happening is when you do this together, because it started together, right? We tried to do work separately, individually, but because all of this, our trauma, not everyone has so much trauma. Actually, a very common thing that most people say is, I don't have issues with my sibling. I just don't talk to them. Right? Which is and so ultimately it's our sibling relationship is the most important relationship, and you need to go back to it. We really want to empower you to go back to it and take baby steps.
I want to add something.
Let me finish up. Take baby steps, and we have obviously lots of tools and science behind it in the book. Right, go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. I just wanted to say that with little kids, Jessica brings up such an important thing that we figured out, which is, not everybody encodes memory the same way. And so for Jessica, because she wasn't a word nerd like I was as a young child, she encoded it differently. And so that when our mother came to ask, what happened here, girls? I had a very clear, linear, chronological way of explaining how things happened. And I felt like I was right because that was right for what I remembered. And Jessica could not compete with that, even though her experience was equally valuable. And so one of the things that we came to one of the things we came to, how we say it in the book is, it's not about accuracy. It's about authenticity. And it has to be that parents need to understand that sometimes a child may not be able to, give you an information about what happened as much as what they felt. So finding ways of looking at their experience and with the perspective that both children have their own experience and both are valuable. And so it's important to try as much as you can to give each child the experience first of being heard, of being seen by you as the mother, as the caretaker. That first and foremost, that's what needs to happen, right? Before we then apply whatever we think or feel onto the situation, which may or may not be right, but it's irrelevant for them if we're not, and I mean, we see this as people who are in intimate relationships. If we come and share something with our partner and they tell us how we screwed up, we're like, hey, hold on. Did you hear what I said? Did you take in my position? And I think that we all, just as humans, want that feeling. We seek that. We long for it. And if we can teach our kids that by modeling it for them and also giving them the lived experience of that, I think that that's a way that mothers could make a difference.
It really, really reframes like sibling disagreements, right? It's like siblings have I feel like old way is like siblings have a disagreement. Mom or dad come in as like the referee and call it like, okay, you're right, you're wrong this time, you're fine, you get a punishment. But, looking at it this way, it's coming from, the reflective functioning kind of approach where it's like, I'm so curious about what's your emotional experience in this disagreement. I'm so curious about yours. We can share that and understand it. And then, later work on, once everyone's calm, we can work on like, how can we treat each other more, kindly next time or like mediate something like this, right? That's so different to look at it that way.
Yeah. And I want to say, Jessica doesn't love this so much, but I feel that it was really helpful for me that, and helpful for us at different times, that I try, if I can't think of what to do and I know whatever my instinct is right now is not what I want to do, I try to think what would be the opposite of this thing, and so there was a moment between Jessica and I when we were fighting, Jessica and I, as we were on this journey of healing, we were filming our documentary, Roots Tour documentary that we did together. We were having a disagreement and we just were finding ourselves returning to that energy, not the style.
Well, it was
but the
our
energy
first time also being together in person where we had been on Zoom. So that is an important.
That's exactly right.
Right,
and we were worried about, because one of the ideas in our methodology is that the healing needs to start at a 2-dimensional, like on the computer, not in person. Okay. Because we get too triggered by our nonverbal communication. And so it was the first time we were together and are standing there trying to, be seen and heard by each other. And it was not working. And I just grabbed her and I hugged her, which was the opposite of how I was feeling in that moment, but it soothed. And so I find, and I do this as a mother beautiful. Also, my instinct is to say things that is not going to be helpful. So wait, hold it. What do they need to hear right now? What do they need to feel from you right now before I, and that is a practice. That is a skill and it's a muscle that we have to learn. And it's not easy.
Yeah. I imagine sorry, go ahead.
No. Well, the way I did that with my kids is so that I didn't know what to say, but I Googled like, what does every human want to hear? And so I Googled those things and I had them in my phone so that in that moment that they were blah, like, and I would say these things to them to make them feel love and seen and heard. So that,
and it anchored you.
Well, right. Exactly.
Yeah.
And they felt,
I always say that you can talk to your inner child while you're talking to your
exactly. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And Jessica would have loved to have had those things said to her during that moment. And you're exactly right. We reparent ourselves as we parent our children. I mean, at least that's what I did.
Yeah. Amazing. So you went through this amazing journey, you've written a book. It's so exciting. Tell us, to sum it up, like what have been the benefits for you? How did reconnecting and repairing change your experience?
I mean, honestly, it made it so obvious of who I wanted in my life and didn't anymore. It Very just cool. Became so clear. And so I live in Austin, Texas now, but I was in Scottsdale at the time. And I told my friend group, I'm not going to hang out with this one person anymore. If you invite her to a party, I will interact with her. I'll act normal. But I am not going to invite her to my place. I'm not going to do anything. I'm not going to instigate anything regarding her. I'm going to block her on my phone. She's not nice to me. She's abusive. And everyone even acknowledged to her, like throughout time, that she was abusive. And so it just made it so clear of, like, it took the glasses off of how my old way of seeing human beings were, because we healed each other. And then, I mean, it really, it allowed, for the second thing I'll say, and then Bluma, is that it allowed me to pursue what I've always really wanted to pursue, of who I'm meant to be in this world. It opened that my purpose even wider lens, and which is, what I'm pursuing now, and just changes your whole life in a positive way.
Amazing. Sounds like real healing.
Beautiful. Yeah. I think that how I would like to say what happened for me is that I look at these origin stories, these, these pain points from our past that are like a terrarium. Okay. Like I imagine this terrarium, and then like these plants just sort of going up like tentacles. Okay. And they're receptors for protecting us from this pain that we never want to experience again, because it's so deep and vital to our survival at such an early age. And it's how we learn how to cope. And so by going into those origin stories and healing them, all of these, these tentacles to receive danger signals from way up top, suddenly these things started to recede, and I wasn't as tender or triggered or reactive to things that had been so definitive for me, defined my personality and my stressors. And then I suddenly started to, different than Jessica, I started to feel less in need of controlling my outer environment, because I felt safe inside, that I could manage it from my end. And so if somebody showed up that way, I could in the moment feel safer and more comfortable to be okay with how I reacted, instead of worrying that I might overreact and then burn a bridge, or not react and then resent and all these other things. And so
I love that shift, right? Being able, I found that in my healing as well, through other ways. I haven't looked at this yet, but you know that you have safety inside. You know you love yourself. You have these amazing resources inside, and so you don't need to control. And you know that you can't. You figure that out, right? That you can't control what
and
others
it takes
do. They're
time,
on their journeys,
right?
Yeah.
And you can hear that. I think when I say, like, I was able to go into my purpose, really, there's this quiet voice that you hear inside of you.
Yes.
And you don't listen to it that often, because there are all these other energies and emotions screaming, right, to be heard and seen and understood. And when you can, like Bluma was saying, the terrarium, when you can like prune it, or
Exactly.
put love towards it more, then you can hear that inner voice that is quiet whispering to you to listen to.
Beautiful. I imagine it also is an opening to look together at some of the like the parental wounds, right?
Oh my
Where
gosh.
you don't have to do that alone.
Yes, we had one of the first conflicts that we had as we were healing had to do with our mother. And, in the interest of time, I won't go into it here, but we had to address not just how we felt about each other, but then the family dynamic came in, and how do we deal with this family dynamic in a way that allows us to still hold the healing that we have worked so hard for, and also have these relationships be what they were / are. actually, as you heal your adult sibling relationship, it does impact positively the family dynamic. It has no other option but to do that, right? So Jessica and our mother ended up starting to have real conversations about things, and our mom amazingly has been supportive of our journey this entire time, even though she, and listen, our dad has a whole story here too. Okay, I'm not going to go into that, but it is a real part of that process too. So they were able to grow that as well.
She's a big part of the documentary, and not in it, but the discussion of it. And she's gone to multiple, we've been in film festivals, she's gone to multiple film festivals, and people who come ask her, how do you feel about that? And she says, that's not who I am anymore.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it's, and also she and I have healed in a lot of different areas. And she's 80 something years old. And now that I have, am taking care of my needs, and I have Bluma, and other beautiful people in my life, I can not allow, but I can witness her as her and not need to, like Bluma was saying, control it. Like just, or if I'm uncomfortable with it, like with me building my business right now, she has a lot of anxiety around things in life. And I said to her, I don't want to hear it. It doesn't help me with the path that I'm going on. I already have my own that I'm worrying about, and you giving me yours is making it not healthy for me. So,
Jessica used to experience that, I think. And I mean, I can say that, we have the same thing, that Jessica used to really feel like frustrated by our mother's intention around that. And I think we've come to another part of this, healing, is that you have the ability to give people grace, because that a lot of what people are responding to has nothing to do with you. It's their story. It's their stresses. Yeah. And so Jessica can hold love and friendship for our mom, even though she doesn't like what our mother's saying or doing in that moment. And I think that's, we're using our mom as an example, but that's the growth of this. That's how powerful this healing is.
Right.
Yeah. Amazing.
If you can heal your relationship with your mom, it's pretty much everyone.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for this amazing discussion, introduction into your work. We'll put some links down in the episode. Let us know, where can people find out more and get your book and all that fun stuff.
So it's your Sib Hub, like your YOUR, and then Sib, like sibling, SIB, and then hub, HUB.com. And we're going to also share, we prepared for your, just specifically for today, an archetype. We didn't go into great detail regarding it, but it's fun to see who you are and who your sibling. Well, Bluma, you can explain it more.
Yeah, right. So we talked just briefly about like this idea of archetypes, right? So Jessica was the black sheep and I was the favorite. You can have a golden child, you can have the rebel, you can have the overlooked one, you can have the invisible one. Everybody identifies in different ways with their role, because, each one of us is different. And so we created a little fun quiz for your listeners, if they want, to verify what they may already know intuitively as who they were, and also who maybe their sibling, maybe they'll want to know, give their sibling the quiz and see, or their friend or their partner, and like see who they are. And it gives us a little blib about what that role was, what the gifts of that role is, what the, strengths or maybe areas you could improve. And then just a little way of thinking about it, just clinically a little bit, just a teensy tiny bit. So that's on the website too.
I was just thinking of all the people. When you said the archetypes, I was like, I'm thinking of all the people I know. And
yeah,
it is a great place to start to understand yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
absolutely. So we'll share that.
Great. We'll put all the links up, and thank you both again. And
thank you.
Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks, Greer. Take care.